and no services will begin until that determination is made. So the workflow process is flipping on the fee-for-service side at the same time as the April 1st at the April 1st implementation of the Cdet tool. And I believe we actually had a Medi-Cal provider bulletin that came out last week that clarified those changes. So the Medi-Cal manual is up to date with that as well for implementation on April 1. So the eligibility and adjudication process requirements, I just wanted to, again, emphasize, as I did at the beginning, that back in September and in June and July, when we did training for the phase-in under managed care, we provided you with some guidance with regards to new CBAS candidates and how the workflow works under managed care and now under the fee-for-service side as well, regular Medi-Cal. And these are a recycling of those slides for your reference. Our focus today is to talk about the new tool, so we weren't planning on spending a great deal of time walking through any of these, but these slides are here for your reference, especially those of you who are joining us today who are new to the program, so that you understand sort of how a new individual comes in and obtains CBAS services through the referral process, their enrollment into managed care if they're not there yet, the request for eligibility determination and face-to-face by the plan from the CBAS provider or the other referring entity, the CBAS center doing their multidisciplinary team assessments, submitting a request for authorization for services, and then the beginning of services. That's what this slide characterizes, and it's here for your reference. There's also some narrative in the next couple of slides that explain how the process works and the time frame requirements on scheduling of face-to-face assessments and doing the face-to-face and authorizing services. Those are all laid out in these slides here, the new candidates process detail. And again, that's just a narrative version of what's depicted in the graphical slide. Some new candidate expedited detail where we talk about individuals who are coming from hospital discharge, nursing facility discharge, and the expedited process time frame expectations. They're all laid out there in slides 1 and 2 there. And then the process for existing CBAS participants, those who are already authorized for CBAS services, have services being delivered at the CBAS Center through their approved individual plan of care, and then the reauthorization for those services and how that works, and face-to-face requirements if they are required based on a change in the level of service. So again, more narrative details explaining the slide, the graphical slide. So we didn't want to spend a bunch of time on that today because we're here to talk about the tool itself. And so with no further ado, unless Jeannie, you have some questions for us, our plan is to walk through a copy of the slides and the instructions. And let's start by pulling up the instructions and just showing it to you. Actually, before I do that, I think what I will do is show you, if I get to the right place, sort of a summary of some of the changes that took place with this tool. And then we can walk through the instructions and the tool itself. So the elimination of fields that were no longer relevant. Fields that were relevant in the version 1.0 because we were transitioning from the ADHD benefit to the CBAS benefit. There were fields in there that were related to that transition that no longer pertained once the plans took over after October. And so we wanted to eliminate those fields and eliminate the confusion. We'll talk about what those fields are in a moment. We also took the form and broke it down into three main sections. Three main sections designed to capture, one, the data on the participant that is gathered during the face-to-face and during any other additional record review. That's the assessment and evaluation section in section 1. So any of the information about the participant, or the potential participant, their diagnoses, medications, their level of need, their functional capacity, their psychosocial condition, their home environment, all of that is now in section 1. Section 2 is about the, the eligibility and medical necessity criteria that are in the law, that are in the waiver, that are in the Darling v. Douglas settlement. Those are all the criteria for participation, and now they're located in what we hope is a user-friendly section with questions asking the evaluator, the plan evaluator, the DHCS evaluator, whether the individual that they're doing their determination on meets those individual criteria. One by one, there's a checkoff. So that's Section 2. Section 3 is a clear documentation of the outcome of the face-to-face evaluation. So the three main sections are just sort of a new grouping of all the information with our 20/20 hindsight of looking back to our experience of doing the transition and grouping the information so that it makes for a very, very supportable argument for either the determination of eligibility or ineligibility. There's a whole page for signature now, and again, some more detailed explanation of how the signatures need to be laid out. And there's a full page for comments, and then there's a whole set of instructions that goes along with the form. So those are the primary changes to the tool. And so now let's do a walkthrough, and we'll talk about what those look like. All right, so the instructions document, and G, we did send these to everybody.
Yeah,
is that
they
true?
Went out this morning to
Okay.
everybody that was on the managed care list.
Okay, and these are also available, the tool, the instructions, the slides are all available on the, I know they're on the CDA website, and there's a reference in these slides for both the DHCS and the CDA website. I'm not sure they're posted on DHCS yet.
I think they are.
They are posted on the CDA website, so if you didn't get them, you can go grab them off the web from the reference that's in your slides. Okay, so a quick walkthrough of the instructions. Just like the form, it mirrors those separate parts, part 1, 2, and 3. And so at the top of the instructions, you see that the demographics and sections A to G, those include all of the information that you're capturing during that face-to-face evaluation. Part 2, which begins with section H, is where the eligibility and medical necessity qualification criteria are, so that you can clearly map how, via a checklist, the individual either meets or doesn't meet the criteria that are specified in the requirements. And then part 3, where the outcome, the determination is captured from the face-to-face, that's sections I and J, and that's now in part 3. So those are the beginning of the instructions. There's a set of general instructions for completing the face-to-face. You can read through these in detail later on if you haven't seen them already. I draw your attention to a couple of important points with regard to the general stuff that we'll stress as we go through the tool about if there's a need for explaining things. We've put plenty of fields in there now for you to capture the explanation for where the source of the information is, or if there was an insufficiency of information, how you can document that. Those are important general guidelines. Under number 4, that's an important set of instructions that for the purposes of an independent determination of eligibility, the face-to-face evaluators are to accept documentation from CDAS providers that are not to accept any documentation from the CDAS providers unless it is created by staff not affiliated with the center. So in other words, the CVAS Center is not to have begun any kind of assessment at that point in time that you're doing the face-to-face. So the information that you're capturing on the tool, the sources of that information, any records or written documentation would need to be done from somebody outside of the center. So for example, a history and physical provided by an external primary care provider would be an example. So that's an important clarification on the instructions. And then there's part 1 instructions for the actual evaluation and how to capture information. Part 2, how to walk through each of the, checking off each of the boxes necessary regarding the criteria for participation. And part 3, instructions regarding capturing the eligibility outcomes and signatures, comments, etc. So that's pretty much what I wanted to focus on there. And if you read through those as we're going, or you check them out and you have questions, sure, send them off to us, and we will answer them as we go. But that's the general overview of the instructions. And now a walkthrough of the tool itself. And I think, Debbie, I'm going to kick most of this to you. I think we've already talked about the overview of each of the sections. So as we go through, you can see up the top corner there, Part 1 is starting on page 1. Part 2 begins on page 5, and Part 3 begins on page 7. So that's the sort of high level, very high level. And now we're going to drill down and talk about what's in this tool and some of the changes to the tool and some of the rationale for those changes. So Debbie, you want to take it from here?
Okay. In the first section, or the first block of information, we took suggestions and we took what the needs were or what we saw had happened over the past year with the original CEDT and tried to arrange it so that it met everybody's needs. You may see things that you don't need to worry about or that don't concern you. Interview, face-to-face location, that was one of the requests by the managed care plans. I don't believe our field offices will